Var hälsad sköna morgonstund som av profeters helga mun är oss bebådad vorden. Ja, det här är några rader ur en av psalmerna som ska sjungas här imorgon bitti på julottan i Seglåra kyrka.
Det är sköna ord det där att höra. Och det är den första psalmen som sjunges när alla står upp och alla sjunger med hög och bestämd röst. Var hälsad sköna morgonstund.
Och så blir det en sån här härlig stämning.
Precis, omedelbart.
Förstår det. Du är ju här och förbereder nu inför julottan.
Det har jag gjort under ett par timmar här, så det mesta är väl klart nu.
Vad är det du gör?
Man byter antipendium ifrån det lila som har varit före julen här till vitt antipendium.
Det är duken vi pratar om.
Ja, det är det här som för det. Och sen så ser man till att det är nya, fräscha, fina ljus överallt. Som ger också sin stämning på sitt sätt. Och så har vi lagt ut psalmböcker så det är färdigt.
Det är klart nu. Och
ja,
det,
i stort
det är
sett.
Behaglig värme känner man behöver inte frysa.
Det ska det bli imorgon bitti också.
Hur många räknar du med kommer hit?
Jag hoppas det inte kommer mer än omkring 300, för det är vad vi har plats i den här kyrkan. Och skulle det komma mer så har vi inte så mycket mer att visa eller låta dem se på än de djur som finns. Allting annat är stängt här.
Ja, då får vi hoppas att det håller sig runt
300. Det brukar vara ungefär så.
Hur många julotter har du själv varit med om i kyrkan här?
Ja, det här är ett pensionärsarbete jag har, men jag kan räkna med uppåt ett 20-tal.
Har du något särskilt minne från någon julotta?
Då tar jag nog ett minne från när vi var här några år med våra egna barn. Det var väldigt fint. Jag minns en julottemorgon där det hade nysnö och vi gick där barnen vände sig om och såg sina fotspår. Det är ett starkt minne jag har.
Den här kyrkan är ju ganska gammal.
Den byggdes 1730, men inte på den här platsen förstås. Alla hus är ju flyttade någonstans ifrån i Sverige och hit upp på Skans. Och det här kommer från trakten av Borås.
Så den har stått här i början?
Kom hit 1916.
Okej. Ja, nu är det alltså jul och då tänker man på Jesusbarnet och de 3 vise männen. Det förknippar man med julen och med kristendomen. Men det finns ju också annan religion och kultur. Och Annika Dopping, hon har träffat 3 män som besitter en helt annan visdom.
Genuine human smile is always bring, I think, some kind of deep comfort.
I mean, if someone is not humorous, then there's something wrong with them. They need a little more attention towards themselves. Laughter is very natural. See, every baby, it laughs. You don't need a joke to laugh. I mean, there is a laughter that comes deep from within.
Well, if you have laughter, then you have a lot of energy inside you. The more serious you are, the less likely it is that you'll be responsible. Because you're so caught up in your own self-importance. How can you be responsible? Where if you have a lot of laughter inside you, then you have the opportunity to be responsible.
Now one example. Now one mosquito now here. Some irritation and even some pain. If you lose temper, and although you have too much is a temper, although you intend to hit on it, but so much temper comes, you may hit here. You miss target very often. But without anger, if you really want to eliminate that, you can gently take the effective action, isn't it?
Why is it that so much wisdom comes from the eastern part of the world?
Something has to come from somewhere.
Dalai Lama är Tibets andliga ledare. Han fick Nobels fredspris 1989 och lever i exil i Indien med tusentals andra tibetaner. Sedan 50 år av kinesisk ockupation utsätts hans folk för förföljelse, tortyr och folkmord. Trots det lever han konsekvent i enlighet med sitt budskap: icke-våld, tolerans och medkänsla. Deepak Chopra är indisk läkare och arbetar med att förena den mångtusenåriga österländska visdomen med den moderna västerländska vetenskapen. Han är också författare och lever i USA med fru och 2 vuxna barn. Hans böcker om visdom och hälsa läses över hela världen. Ravi Shankar är också indier och arbetar i många länder med att lära ut praktiska tekniker för att nå inre frid. Han har också startat ett projekt för att skapa maktbalans i de indiska äktenskapen. Indiska kvinnor får hjälp att bli egna företagare för att bli ekonomiskt oberoende. Dessutom hjälper han föräldralösa och fattiga barn till utbildning. 3 vise män ifrån öst.
Welcome, Dr. Chopra. What is your purpose in life?
My purpose in life is to discover my own healing, peace, creating harmony, love, happiness.
How do we go about finding our own purposes in life?
If you're doing what you really want to do, you lose track of time.
That's the best sign.
That's the best sign. You escape time-bound awareness and enter timeless awareness.
And then you're on the right track.
Then you're in dharma, as they say, yes.
Yes, because that you believe that everybody has a purpose.
I think that there are some aspects of purpose which are common to us all. We all want to find a meaning in life, everyone, and to discover their so-called spiritual dimension, that part of their being which is universal, that domain of awareness which is universal. But then I think everyone has a unique talent and a unique way of expressing it, and when they find that, then they escape time-bound awareness, and if they put it to use and give it to humanity, then they're called successful people.
Men varför är vi då inte alltid i harmoni med oss själva?
See, neither at home nor in school have we ever been taught how to handle our negative feelings. But feelings, you cannot directly deal with them. The more you don't want to feel, the more you will feel it. The more you want to forget something, the more it comes to your mind. The more you don't want to remember something, the more it comes, right? Now, in such situations, mind can be attended to through breath. Emotions can be attended through breath. I usually give an example. If mind is the kite, breath is the thread. The longer the thread, the higher it flies. The only culprit in the world is stress.
And we tend to increase the stress instead of releasing it.
See, any pious person, if you make him stressed or get low energy, they'll get agitated. And stress comes because of lack of energy. And we have 4 sources of energy, mainly we can categorize. One way of seeing it, 4 sources. One is food, proper food, that can help. Second is sleep, good rest.
Important.
See, any calm person, if you don't let him sleep for 4 days, you will find him violent, agitated at least. Sleep is an important source of energy. The third most neglected and more vital source of energy is breath.
Must be terrible if you live in an area where the air is very polluted then.
Not only the air, we don't breathe enough or properly. See, 90% of the impurity in the system goes out through the breath. We are using only 30% of our lung capacity.
And we can increase that.
Yeah, if we do some deep breathing or some breathing techniques a few minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, it can heal you of many mental and physical illnesses. We have found this, around the world.
I think the Romans said that you should start every morning with 12 deep breaths or something in order to capture all the energy you need.
Yeah. See, breath is the link between body and mind. Because every rhythm of the mind has a corresponding rhythm in the breath. But mind, when you cannot directly handle it, through breath you can handle it. It's easier.
If you want to affect your mood, you can go through the breathing.
Through the breath, it's easier.
And if you give an example, if you are upset, of course, you breathe very, very with short breaths, and you're very upset. How can you very concretely think then in order to alter the mood?
One of the technique, which is inbuilt in us, that I can tell you is, see, when you get angry, what happens? You come up with a sound, right? When you're so much frustrated, the sound comes. The sound releases you of some blocks from within. This is an inbuilt system, but we are not aware of it. If you consciously do it, when you're angry, just take a handkerchief, something. You do it like that. If someone is angry with their boss, they just do it like that. They don't need to express all that anger like that. But the mind becomes more calm and aware.
So it's a way of releasing it instead of needing to acting it out.
Yeah. Release the anger through breath in such a mild fashion that it doesn't destroy any situation around you. Then you become more aware of it. Oh, anger is coming, and you watch it, observe it, and then it just dissolves.
As you're breathing?
Yeah.
Because we breathe probably fairly superficially nowadays most of the time. And you mean, do we not then use our full energy?
We don't use, and also the rhythm of our breath is different. If you observe a child, a healthy child, the way child breathes and the way adult breathes is much different. Because our stress level can be measured by the rhythm of our breath.
So that's the third source of energy.
And the fourth source of energy is a positive or serene state of mind.
And how do we achieve that?
Yeah, see, you might have noticed if you feel negative or rough, 1 hour of negative thinking, you feel so exhausted. The reverse is true. If the mind is calm, serene, even for a few moments, if you meditate even for a few minutes, that gives so much more energy.
And how do you meditate? How can you do that if you haven't?
There are many techniques. You can adopt any one of the techniques and go ahead.
What is most important then that this technique includes?
Effortlessness.
Spend time alone, if you meditate, if you take periods of silence, if you go into nature and spend time with nature, if you have a relationship where you have the same intention, relationship, through the mirror of relationship, you can learn a lot. Because whenever you're attracted to somebody, you're actually finding traits in them that you want in yourself. When you're repelled by someone, you're discovering traits in them which you deny in yourself. So anytime you react to a certain relationship, whether you're repelled or attracted, that's a very good tool to evolve. You ask yourself, what am I denying in myself, or what am I searching for? So relationship is very effective, the mirror of relationship, to evolve, to go to that level. Spending time quietly, confronting all your secret passages and dark alleys and ghost-filled attics, and confronting the dark side and releasing it and sharing it and acknowledging it and expressing it is another way to do it. And ultimately, it's the witnessing of all of these processes that leads to more and more awareness.
And eventually then, if we do not be, if we're not judgmental about our own dark sides, we will not be repelled by people reflecting them in ourselves.
Yeah.
It's It's not easy. And do you think it's difficult for you, for instance, as a person, to live this? Is this a constant battle to accept people that do provoke you?
Less and less. I find myself being less provoked than before. You know, there are instances where I encounter people that I consider inconsiderate and hostile and confrontational and impatient and angry. And then when I see that and I see that it's affecting me, I go to my room and write down those traits: inconsiderate, hostile, confrontational, angry, etc. And then I ask myself, have I been those things? And of course, I know many instances when I've been those things. Then I try and figure out when, where, how. And I actually even call those people up and say, have you observed me with these traits? And this, when there's a pause on the other side, I know that, the answer is in the affirmative. And then when I go and walk out after having done that process, then the same person who was triggering a charge in me doesn't do that anymore. What is more important is I begin to love that person, not by saying I love you, but because I've already somewhere deep inside me forgiven that person. And then the most dramatic thing is that person's behavior changes, because in a way I was sending a signal that was eliciting that behavior.
In order to practice compassion, you need practice of tolerance and patience. In order to practice tolerance, you need someone who creates some problem. Only to that side, the real opportunity of practice of tolerance. So therefore, you need practice of tolerance. So therefore, enemy provide us that good opportunity. So from that viewpoint, there is possibility to develop some kind of feeling of gratitude. So that is I think that kind of compassion is unbiased. That is the genuine compassion. This kind of compassion, there is no sense of pittiness, sense of looking down, but you see sense of concern out of respect, out of recognition they are right. So that is genuine compassion.
See, children by nature are friendly. If they're unfriendly, it is because of stress. So we need to look into the problem and see how we can release the stress of the child. Insecurity, stress can be released by giving a loving atmosphere and giving them simple exercises to do.
Like what? What kind of exercises would be nice?
Some like active playing and helping others and allowing them to contribute in other children's life and then feel proud about it. And usually I suggest to children to make one new friend a day.
One new friend a day, why?
See, a child grows up with about 30, 40 kids in the classroom. And they spend 4, 5, 6, 7 years with those 30 kids. And still they are not friendly with all the 30 children.
How come?
That's what we wonder, because we have not educated them on the human values. We stuff them with a lot of information. We give them knowledge about all the things around them, but we have not given enough emphasis on human values. And that's why, when they grow older, when they come out of the school, they don't know to be friendly with people.
And how can you teach somebody to be friendly?
It is possible because it's in one's nature. It's not something that you have to bring from outside. You only need a proper environment and certain modes and ways to attend to this problem.
And would this be presented in fairy tales or tales or stories, for instance? Would that be a way of educating children?
That is possible. You can do that, but more could be personal interaction of the teachers in the school with the children and create a sense of belongingness among themselves. You know, if they each can make one new friend every day, they know how to be friendly. Because when they come out of the school, they have to live with millions of people in the world. And they would know how to relate themselves without inhibitions. You know, it's the inhibition that blocks their beautiful quality, nature that they are. You know, when we start owning all that is in the world as belonging to us, then we have a broader vision of life, broader vision of our society and the whole world in general. Otherwise, I say only this belongs to me, or this is from East, or this is from West, or I belong to this community, or I belong to that community, this race or that race, then I limit our whole perception about life. Our main problem is with the ego, the identification, you know. We think we are somebody. Say, I am a Hindu, or I am a Muslim, I am a Christian, or I am Jewish, or I am Buddhist. I take on one identity, and to protect this somebodiness, I put my whole life. I don't even mind losing my life, but I want to protect this identity, I am somebody. Do you see that? Now, this awareness had to be created. The moment I take I am somebody, all others who are not that somebody no more belongs to me. I am not interested in them. I don't feel a belongingness to them.
And how can we feel this unity? What is needed to feel that?
You see, first and foremost, we have to look into our identity crisis. We are part of one universal intelligence. We are part of the divine spirit. The first identity. Second identity that we share to emphasis on, we are human beings. And the third could be, I am a man or a woman, male or female. And the fourth identity could be, I belong to this nation or that nation. And a fifth place could be given to religion. I am a Hindu, Muslim, Jewish or Christian, whatever. Now, the order of identification, when it reverses, that's when war starts, confusion starts, chaos starts. But if people can identify themselves first and foremost with divine intelligence and then human beings, then, you know, they'll prefer peace for quarrel, fights.
Well, why do you think we have this strong urge to belong to and to limit us and to identify us? It's the ego, I presume, that's there. But why is it so strong, such a struggle in us?
See, the question why always comes or associated with suffering. When there is suffering, we ask, why am I suffering? Right? And that is how it is. No one ever asks why I am so happy.
The next century, I hope and wish a century of dialogue, not century of killing, violence, war. I think we experimented to solve problem, but I think failed.
Dalai Lama säger att på samma sätt som eld aldrig kan släcka eld, kan våld heller aldrig släcka våld.
Basically, I think because of human being. Sometimes I really feel, if on this small planet, no human being, then I think planet could be more safer. Less problem. But then, whether we like it or not, we're already there. Nobody wanted to die. Nobody wanted to disappear. And on the other hand, human beings also have, I think, tremendous sort of, I think, great potential for good thing. With human intelligence, with human good heart, if these two join, then ability from human intelligence and a determination, sense of caring, or infinite altruistic can develop from human heart. This is something wonderful. The other species of mammals cannot practice or cannot develop such things. So this is our, I think, the unique quality. I think we must, realize this good quality, and we must utilize this quality effectively. So, when we face a conflict or disagreement, essentially because of human intelligence, we have a lot of visions, a lot of ideas, so it's a conflict develop. So the proper way to overcome this conflict also is human intelligence. Try to find, the positive way with determination, sense of caring, look long-sighted, short-term, far-sightedness, and long-term interest. So through that way, I think, we can solve all these conflict. At least, I think, we can minimize this conflict. And as a result, certainly, we can be I think, less man-made problem, man-made suffering. So usually I describe, if we true selfish, then should be a wise selfish rather than foolish selfish. But if you think the all human problem can solve by material development alone, that's wrong. In order to achieve meaningful life, happy life, the mental factor is equally very important. So there is no point to neglect about mental quality. So I think material development and mental development, these must go together.
In Western society, we tend to consider youth, and especially a forever young body, to be the ultimate goal at times. How can we alter that notion so that we can enjoy maturing instead?
I think the problem is what do you identify with? You know, if you're brought up in a completely materialistic worldview, then you identify with material things. So toys, money, sex, and power become very important goals in life. And, you know, they're not really unimportant goals. Everybody who has a physical body is going to have physical needs. And even St. Augustine said in his earlier days, he said, Lord, give me chastity, give me continence, but not just now. So, you know, toys and money and sex and power are not lesser gods. By gods, I mean desires, because desires are the mechanics of manifestation. I don't think toys and money and sex and power are lesser gods. I think they're perhaps earlier gods. You know, a woman has to fulfill their material aspirations before they aspire to higher things. Just like before you do that, you have to fill your stomach with food and have shelter. You know, we have hierarchies of needs. You start with food and shelter, then you get into material luxuries. And finally, when you have all that, you aspire to higher, or you might say later, gods.
Couldn't you skip those material ones? Do you think you need to pass them?
I think in the world that we live in, you probably need to go through those stages. If you skip it, you'll be like the monk who's sitting up there in a monastery and actually is not there at all because his attention is out in the other world. You've heard that Zen story probably about these two monks. You know the story about the young monk and the old monk, and
Please tell us.
well, there's this young monk and there's the old monk, and they're on a pilgrimage, and they come across a stream, and there's a beautiful young woman there who cannot swim, and she wants to go across, and the young monk says, sit on my shoulder and I'll carry you across the river. And of course, in that process, he becomes a little intimate with her. But when they get across the stream, he puts her down, and off they go on their pilgrimage. And as they're walking on their pilgrimage, you can see that the old monk has a scowl on his face, and he's upset. And as they continue on their journey, he apparently gets more and more disturbed, and finally he can't hold himself anymore. He looks to the young monk and he says, I can't believe you did that. And the young monk says, what? He says, I really can't believe you did that. You know, we're supposed to be celibate monks, and you carried that young woman across the stream on your shoulder. And the young woman said, well, I left her 6 hours ago. You're still carrying her. So it's very obvious that true detachment, which is the goal of spirituality, in order to embrace the wholeness and leave the fragment, is in consciousness. It's not really in the world of matter. This example of the monk is a good example. So I think, we all have to go through certain phases in our life, and that's why it's so important not to be judgmental and morally self-righteous about what is or is not spiritual.
But you mean the attachment to the body conserved the same way is the same kind of...
It's a search for spirituality. This whole attention to the body, this whole attention to glamour and to material things is a search for joy. And any search for joy is a search for the spirit. Now, you will discover one day that it's not enough, but nobody can tell you that.
You need to experience it by yourself.
You need to find out for yourself, and you may not this time around.
But you don't even think that we should try to alter the attitude towards youth and young bodies?
We shouldn't try to alter anything. We should just explore very quietly in our own awareness what gives us joy. And that, if you do that, if you take the time to be alert and aware, you'll discover on your own. But if you try and make a mood of it, if you try and change your attitude, you'll just get hypertension and probably ulcers.
Very often, you see, people get the impression when we talk about compassion, tolerance, these things, you see, people consider these are religious subject. That's not the case. While here, you see, when I explain about the importance of these mental good quality, you see, not related with any religious faith, whether one individual should believe or non-believer, it's individual right. Some people feel without any faith you can manage happily and you feel more satisfaction. Absolutely right. But what I'm emphasis here is without these good human good quality, inner good quality, the individual person cannot be very happy or very calm person. That's quite clear. So therefore, you see, these good human qualities, usually I consider the essence of secular ethics. That means good heart, sense of harmony, sense of respect, or sense of concern, or sense of caring. Now, these are the very important matter for humanity. After all, human being is social animal. So then, once you see these mental good quality develop and sustain in our day-to-day life, then every action then become non-violent, constructive action.
I know when Dalai Lama was coming to Sweden the first time, he said, I would very much like to meet your spiritual leaders. And everybody looked around and said, we don't have any spiritual leaders, we only have political leaders. Is that something that is necessary for a society, would you say, to have spiritual leaders?
Is it necessary to have a spiritual leader? Every society to have a spiritual leader? Every leader can become spiritual.
By breathing and meditating.
By meditating. So every leader in the society can honor life, give more importance to life, and support the values of compassion and love and service. Then we can find a big transformation around us. And with lack of proper spiritual education, people will become fanatics. The only way to save the world from fanaticism is give them proper spiritual knowledge, in which everyone is made to understand that the whole world belongs to them, and all the scriptures in the world belong to them, whether it's Bible, Quran, Dhammapada, or Bhagavad Gita, any scripture in the world, any wisdom is part of them and belongs to them. When we start owning the whole humanity and all its glories, all its cultures, all its philosophy, then there won't be any problem, wars, or, we can put an end to this madness and the craziness that's going on.
Life is a constant contrast between pleasure and pain, between the extreme opposites that create experience. Inside you, there is a conglomeration of different types of archetypal energies. And these
like what type of energies?
The sinner and the saint, the divine and the diabolical, the sacred and the profane, forbidden lust on the one side and unconditional pure love on the other side, dark night of the soul and beatitude of paradise. These are different basic energies. Then they stoke the furnace of life in the basement of your soul. And most people kind of run away from the dark side and say, I'm only going to do this. And so they suppress these energies. And ultimately these energies burst out as rage or psychotic behavior or hostility or some kind of behavior that is quote-unquote evil. But the evil we see in our society, or the so-called evil we see in our society, is just a projection of our collective psychosis. We project our collective psychosis, as happened during the Second World War in Europe. It was a projected collective psychosis that created the madness of the Holocaust.
So we need to start with our own emotions. Always. And not believe that all the troubles are outside.
That's the manifestation of our collective psychosis.
It's very convenient to blame.
It's convenient to blame Hitler for the Holocaust. But he was a manifestation of something much more evil. It was not this one person. The person was, a
tool for...
He was just another human being, a corporal with a poor self-image.
So in other words, if we would start then becoming more aware, acknowledging our own dark sides...
Then we would help that process.
Then it would manifest outside.
Yeah, there's no other way than forgiveness and love, ultimately. Christ was absolutely right when he said, love can conquer anything. But you cannot get there by saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. That's, again, self-importance. I love you, do you love me? That's what it says. You cannot get there. Love is not an emotion. Love is not a sentiment. Love is a state of being. And when you have that state of being, then everybody around you ceases to feel hostility.
But how do you cultivate compassion? How can you help watering that little plant of compassion in your person?
Compassion is your natural state of being. So it's the same process. It's exactly the same process. You allow the spirit to unfold. You allow the transformation to occur in your consciousness. So, it's this tall building, and then there are infinite elevators going up. And, some of us are in the basement, and some of us are on the first floor, and some of us are on the 50th floor. And it's all okay. It's part of the cosmic soap opera, if you will. And the main thing is to accept that and to become aware of that. The only thing that can really transform anybody is awareness. Once you become aware, then that begins a slow mutation in your consciousness. And that mutation ultimately results in a different reality.
Men hur gör man då för att våga möta sina inre skuggor?
What happens is if you totally first are aware of them, and you acknowledge them, and you become intimate with them, and
your own dark sides, all these
you
aspects.
become intimate with that, then, and you observe it, and you're honest about it, and you can express it. You don't hide it in some dark alley, some secret passage, some hidden dungeon. Then what really happens is you do not accumulate the toxicity of this in your body. But even more important, what happens is that you become spontaneously non-judgmental, because when you see behavior, so-called behavior which is morally inappropriate, quote unquote, you're more willing to forgive it because you have seen it in yourself. And if you become spontaneously non-judgmental, not through I won't judge, but because you've gone through this process, then that spontaneous non-judgment is the basis for forgiveness. And forgiveness is the basis for love. And that's how you get rid of the psychoses of the collective mind, not by going out there and telling people this is how you behave and this is how you don't behave, but by going within and starting with yourself.
So there is a core or something within us that will always hold the wisdom necessary if we look inside?
It is there, when the mind is calm, collective, then anything you do from that state, it's with awareness. See, all mistakes in the world happens through unconsciousness, unawareness. That's all. When we are peaceful from within us, then we are able to create such harmony around us.
So outer peace can never exist without inner peace?
Certainly not. See, we convey more through our whole presence. And our words are just secondary. Do you see that when you get off the plane, the air hostess usually say, "Have a nice day." Of course, they say it out of courtesy. They don't feel, it's not coming from a feeling level. They don't feel it. But the same word, someone close to you say to you. Your mother, your brother, or your friend, your husband or wife, then that carries some vibration along with it, some presence, some feeling. And people are sensitive to that feeling. Someone may say, "I love you very much," but if they are angry inside, and a person can clearly make out, most of the people can make out that it's coming from a different dimension. So if we can clear our presence and bring peace in ourselves, then our presence becomes very harmonious. And when our presence is harmonious, people whoever come in contact with, they automatically become harmonious.
Some marriages are more or less like wars. It's a constant battle and struggle for who is in charge and who. How can you handle that?
Same thing. See, stress is the root cause of all this. Insecurity, stress. And also coming from a space of what I can get rather than what I can contribute.
You know how to bring inner strength. Compassion, usually, you see, is, I think, open our inner door. As a result, you can communicate with other fellow human beings, even animals, I think, very easily. And through that way, you can develop genuine friendship. And that reduces sense of insecurity and reduce fear. Through that way, you get more self-confidence. And that brings more inner strength. Other hand, if you keep here ill feeling towards other or hatred feeling here, it automatically closes our inner door. As a result, you find it very difficult to communicate with other fellow human beings. So, from the Buddhist viewpoint, there is no sort of external evil force. Real enemies here. So you say self-examine, watching. Particularly those believers, whether Christians or Muslims or Jews or Buddhists or Hindus, it is very, very important to examine oneself constantly, whether you truly follow your own teaching or not. That's very important. Because sometimes we quite contented. Sunday church prayer in the church. And as soon as outside the church, no longer any sort of sense of spirituality. That's not effective. I think they attend the church is something like recharging your battery. So they actually use the rest of the time you have to use the battery. When battery become weak, and some meditation or some prayer and recharge. So actual use is rest of the days. If you take any faith, then should take seriously and implement. Then you see you can change from within. So that's very important. I think human weakness, it is often, you see, without examining oneself, easily see something wrong outside and blaming, oh, this is something wrong. Never examine oneself. Before speak something on other, first you should examine. Finger must go here, no, not there.
Något man talar mycket om i den österländska traditionen är karma.
Well, karma is a very complex thing. People think of it in rather simplistic terms and in fact think of it in a linear fashion, which is not how it works. Karma simply means choice. Anytime you make a choice, you begin to create an event line. And that event line is part of a web that extends into infinity. So it's not that one choice causes one effect. One choice causes an infinity of effects, and they occur in a complex way, in that these event lines, any one episode in your life, the entire universe conspires to create it. And so too, anytime you make a choice, you create and affect the entire universe for infinity. If you become aware of the awesome complexity of karma, and you become aware of the choices you're making, and just keep in your mind that every choice you make is going to ripple across the ocean of consciousness into eternity, then what happens is you become a conscious choice maker. And if you become a conscious choice maker, it's just enough to be aware, A, that you're making choices, and 2, that these choices are weaving event lines in the web of eternity. And just those 2 things will help you make karmically correct choices.
And what happens when you do then change the way of action? How does it affect your life?
Well, a karmically appropriate choice is one that creates joy for you and joy for everyone else that's affected by that choice. And that everyone else, of course, includes the entire universe, but of course it affects those that are closer to you much more. So every choice that you make should be made with that in mind. Is this going to bring joy to me? Is this going to bring joy to all the people around me? Some choices, of course, are entirely personal, like making the decision to have a cup of coffee. It doesn't really affect that many people. It affects you personally. But let's say you're making the choice to drink a lot of alcohol. That affects your family, it affects your social structure, it affects your job, it affects other people. So you can see how even simple choices really ripple across space and time. All suffering is a result of having made inappropriate choices. Suffering is not the same thing as pain. Pain is a very important physiological marker of imbalance, and is a reminder that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And if you heed the signal of pain, then you stay in balance. And without that signal, you would never know in fact, what is balance and what is imbalance. So pain is an essential experience for everyone. But I wouldn't say that suffering is an essential experience for everyone. Pain is a physical phenomenon, and suffering is totally in consciousness. You can have a lot of pain and not suffer, and you can have no pain and suffer a lot. So you find people who are terminally ill and they're dying and they don't suffer. And you find people who have a normal cardiogram and normal physical examination and normal blood tests, but they're suffering a lot.
My generation, now more here and here, now we are now ready to say goodbye from this planet. Now you young people, younger generation, you have to face next century. You have the key rule for that century. So right from the beginning, sometimes people talk about good future. Good future will not come from somewhere else. Good future, humanity ourselves have to make a good future. No one else. So therefore, our younger generation, you have to prepare, study well, and meantime, should take care or examine your own mental attitude. If you see big knowledge, but very narrow-minded heart, or bring more disaster. Even your own individual level, you will be, I think, a person. You will be a person always feel something wrong. No good sleep, no good digestion. You may not find a good friend or good companion. Whole your life eventually will ruin. This is a good brain with good heart. Your physical can be good, can be fit. Your family will be a happy family. You will be useful citizen of the community. And through that way, there is real possibility of peaceful world, friendly world, harmonious world, or prosperity world. So therefore, you see, much depend on our brain and heart. This you must, I cannot say must, but I think this is very, very important, you see, to know. And accordingly, you made effort. And then I think here, I want to tell or to share some of my concern. The family. Family have, I think, equally important sort of role to bringing the healthy next generation. And then also those people who are dealing in education field, you also have great important as a role or responsibility. Now, you should not consider, you see, just a teacher giving information to the student, that is to say fulfilled your responsibility. That's wrong. You should show to the student the value of these good human qualities. And like compassion, you cannot explain by word. You cannot introduce in the minds of students by word, but by action.
Is there any advice that you'd have to parents, although you need to do all the experiences, and apart from being a model for your children?
The only advice for parents: be a good model. Don't put pressure, and don't instill guilt in your children. Tell them that they are gifts from the universe, which is what they are, and they're not yours. You're just here as caretakers for a while.